Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. And we have a very special person on today. All of you who know me know that I have a huge part in my heart for entrepreneurs, and especially for entrepreneurs who are immigrants, who come to the USA from another country where they know very few people and they make unbelievable lives for themselves. And that's what we have today. Today we have Serban, and he's an immigrant from Romania. He moved to the USA when he was 23 years young. And so we get to hear his story and get into it. And please welcome to the program, Serban. Thank you for being here.
It's an awesome opportunity. Thank you very much for having me, Kara.
It is my pleasure and my honor. So what went through your mind at such a young age that would make you leave your home country?
What every 23-year-old wants, money, money, money.
Absolutely. And you saw America as the land of opportunity.
Yeah, I saw a few of my friends coming to America and working for a few months and seeing that they made a substantial amount of money in a short amount of time. I was working in Romania part-time and making barely any money, and so the interest really started to peak when I saw all these friends of mine being able to amass a large sum compared to what we had in Romania at that point.
Sure. So walk us through a little bit. How was it an easy thing? You just said, "Hey, I want to go to America," and you just went down and got a passport and came? What was it really like to get here?
No, I mean, it was a process just because applying for a visa is a tedious effort, and then planning where to come here. Luckily, my brother was already here, but having to schedule the flight, working along with, I was still going to school at that point. I think it was more than 6 months in the making to ensure that I can get here. So it wasn't an easy route for sure.
Okay, cool. So you made the decision. Your brother was already here, so that gave you, I'm sure, a lot of comfort that at least you had another human who cared about you that would help you out to get you started. And so once you got here, give us the story of what happened from there. I mean, you said that you came to America to chase the American dream. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, the that was the whole idea, is for me to come here and look for a better opportunity, better than the ones that were laid out for me back in Romania, and coming here and seeing the possibilities that I've never really even imagined was so earth-shattering to just know that you can be in the promised land and make anything of yourself. And I did have probably $200 in my pocket. My brother did offer me a mattress in a corner in his one bedroom apartment, but it just started slow. And I do accredit a lot of the resiliency and the build up to my parents. I wasn't shy of working, so I just came here, started working, kept my head down, picked up any kind of overtime, any kind of extra work that I could find, and slowly built to what I thought was the American dream. And we can get into that a lot
Well,
more.
we are definitely going to get into that, right? Because in your story, I did a lot of research on you, and in your story, the way I picture it is you climbed this ladder and you climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed, and you finally got to the top, and then you realized that your ladder was against the wrong wall.
Exactly. Very
So,
well
so
said.
talk to us about that. What happened?
Yeah, and just like you said, I was climbing the ladder. I was checking the boxes that I thought were the American dream, and that was to have a corporate secure job, to have a steady 401k, to have a red brick home, to have two vacations a year. And those were the things that were instilled in me from a very young age, that was the the epitome of what life should be like. And once I got there, I looked around and I was like, okay, is this it? I've arrived, but it didn't feel like I've arrived, and that was the interesting part. I was I I chased that American dream for many years, and then once I reached it, I thought I was just supposed to just relax and coast in life and just have a good time, not only to realize that the only thing you can do when you're coasting is going downhill. And that's when the struggle started for me, because even though I keep saying that from the outside everything looked good, I started to feel on the inside just an uneasiness, a restlessness about, is this all I'm doing? And that's where I started to struggle. I started to wonder. I started to just not be comfortable. It was just a squirmish feeling that I was having, but I didn't know why.
So yes, I can sure relate to that. What happened? How did you? Who helped you see what you couldn't see?
Mhm. Well, I do accredit a lot of it to my then girlfriend, now wife. She We were together, and she saw me climb this ladder, like you said, and the moment I reached the top and I realized it wasn't the right wall, I didn't know it, and she gently nudged me into a direction of listen to other thoughts, listen to other ideas on what your life could be like. She gently pushed me to a podcast from Lewis House. He had the great Les Brown on. And in that podcast, Les talked about imagining a better life for ourselves and taking ownership of what we can do with our lives and not being limited by certain ideas that we had in our childhood. And that's where really there was the opening of a crack in my thinking. And that's why I love your podcast, because it says, think your way to a great life. And it is that moment where I started to think for myself.
Absolutely. I tell you what, and you mentioned quite a few times Carol Dweck's work, the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. And I think most people feel like if you have a fixed mindset, you have to live with that the rest of your life. You, my friend, are living proof that that's not the case. Was it an easy switch for you?
It's even thinking about it, it gives me chills because of the way I grew up and the ideas that were planted in my head. And it wasn't anybody's fault. That's, we grow up in an environment, we grow with certain surroundings and certain people that say certain things, and we get programmed with these thoughts of, this is how far you can go. And that's what I thought too. That's my limit. I've achieved what I thought I can do, and there was nothing else that I can do. And the moment Carol Dweck opened that door and said, hey, you are so much more capable of doing anything else. You just have to put in the effort. And it was, I know it's a simple concept at the basis of it, but if you really dig deeper into it, we have all these limitations that we set upon ourselves. I'm not good enough at math, or I can't make this much money, or I'm not good with my health. Whatever it is, we set these limitations and we truly believe them. And I truly believe that that was my wall. Like, I could not go any higher. And the moment Carol Dweck stepped in and said, hey, you want to do something more? You want to achieve more in your life? You really can. And it was mind-blowing for me to realize that, effort, time, drive, and something that's really meaningful to me was the recipe to really go beyond that glass ceiling that I put myself in.
That's beautiful. And something you said earlier, you said that your lady gently nudged you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that most ladies who are listening to this are saying, and you listened? How did she do that? How did she approach you to where it was received well?
Yes, I think it was just the right time, because I was boiling for a long time, thinking and racking my head of what exactly it's wrong with my life and myself. Because again, from the outside, I had more than I ever imagined, coming from Romania, getting here, and I've achieved what I thought was just the epitome of a good life. And even though I have achieved all of those, on the inside, it just started to not feel right. And it took me, I think it was more than years, Kara, to just keep boiling and thinking about it. Because at first it was just an uneasiness that I didn't even realize. And the more I was in that place of complacency and uneasiness, the more it started to boil. And it was that point where my wife just opened up the right door to let some steam out and open some new ideas.
Wow. Well, it's very cool that she was there for you. You did something just absolutely mind-blowing for your 40th birthday. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that was already in my new life, in my new journey, and my new exploration. The once I realized that we put limitations on ourselves, nobody else does, and we can surpass all those limitations. Every year I ask myself, what else can I grow in, and what else can I do better? And it so happened that at my 40th birthday, a friend of mine who was turning 50 said that he really wants to do something big. And I'm turning 40. I want to do something big too. He said, why don't we hike the highest peak in Africa, Mount Kilimanjaro? And the moment he said it, not even a second later, I'm like, yep, I'm in. We'll do it.
No questions asked. You just let's go.
Yep, yep. It was a tall enough goal, but I knew from learning about the growth mindset that as long as I put enough effort and dedication into it, it's achievable.
Absolutely. So I forgive my ignorance. How tall is Mount Kilimanjaro?
It's about 20,000, a little less than
Woo!
20,000 feet.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we live in New Mexico, and we've got Colorado, which has a lot of 14ers, 14,000. And that is, there are people that's their whole goal is to hit as many of those 14s as they can. 20 is wow. Tell us some of the things you learned from that trip.
The the biggest thing because I still think about it every now and then. It's been almost 2 years now, but we went there, and we have a whole team that helps us go up the mountain. I don't remember at the moment, but it was probably 20 to 30 people that would carry all of our belongings. We had our day backpack, but then the tents and the food and everything else, everything that goes up has to come down. So that we had a whole team that was going up with us. And it was baffling to see the poverty that was in Africa, and yet these porters that were doing so much more than we were smiling and singing and happy to be there. And it was so incredible to put in perspective. Like, they don't have a lot, yet they're so at peace with what they have and the community that they had. And it really made me wonder, is like, why are they so happy? Because they don't have the red brick house, and they don't have the steady paycheck, and it's very variable. Sometimes they get sick and they don't get that income from climbing the mountain. And I realized that all of it is just a matter of comparison. What they were doing there was such an honor, and it was such a privilege for them to be able to climb with us and carry our luggage, where we are constantly comparing ourselves with something better, and we're never happy. But they were happy with just what they had, and it was such a mind-blowing thing to just realize that we don't need much to be happy. It's just our thinking makes it think like, oh, we need so much more.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You also, in some of your materials, you said that there are fine relationships and great relationships. What would be the difference?
Yes. This was quite a challenge for me because I used to have my own community where I would hang out, and the moment I started embracing the notion of a growth mindset and really pushing myself to grow, not to the typical blueprint of the American dream or whatever that blueprint is set for us, and step out to become a better person, better version of myself, a speaker, a marathon runner, whatever it was. I've noticed that I was hanging out at times with people who would be what I call energy drainers. So there's a difference. I sometimes I hang out with people and we talk about like this discussion is so energy filling for me. Like I walk away from this one twice as energized as I would from a regular discussion. There's the other side of relationships where people are just complaining, they are gossiping, they're just unhappy with what they have, but yet they're not doing anything with it, and those are the energy vampires. And the more I realize that I need to limit my time around those type of people and really hang out with the people that really boost my energy and have the like-mindedness, it really spurred my energy. I remember a friend of mine saying that he's tired of hanging out with pennies, and now he's just hanging out with quarters.
You know, it's good to put it in a way where a quantifiable way like that. I truly believe at some point we will be able to physically see when your energy goes out 28 feet all the way around from you and you impact people. And I believe someday we will literally be able to see the exchange of energy. And when it's bad and someone is sucking the energy from you, then you won't get judged as harshly for separating yourself from family that are the energy vampires. I have to ask you, did you read The Energy Bus? Is that where you got that?
I no, I have not. Energy
Oh,
bus.
you'll like it. It's a really cute short little fable that absolutely talks about the energy vampire and has where like in an office or a family or whatever, you don't ever want to have your name put up under there, right? Because people aren't even aware that they're doing it. I truly believe most of them are clueless to it.
Correct. But I think the more aware you are, the more you start subconsciously to recognize those people, right? You look at your phone and you see someone calling and you don't want to answer. It's kind of obvious, but sometimes you don't realize it.
Yes, yes. Well, and it really does help to have a coach, and you're also a coach. So talk to us a little bit about your coaching career.
Yeah, so I looked at my life and I want, because I am a full-time program manager. I work for a semiconductor company and I love what I do now more than ever in my career. I love interacting with people. This is something that it gives me a lot of energy. But then I also recognize that I can help people that have been in my position 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that were struggling with not knowing their place and that are either checked out or burned out. And in that effort, I'm looking to help myself from 5 years ago. And if there's someone who's at a loss of what exactly they want to do in their lives and they don't know, or they're just working from sunrise to sunset and they don't feel like they get anywhere, then they feel like they're burned out, overwhelmed. I look to help them figure out ways on how they can structure their day in such a way that they can handle all the responsibilities but also live a more fulfilling and successful life.
I love that. One of my heroes, one of my favorite podcasts is Ed Milet, and he says the person you can help the most is the person you used to be.
I
So
totally agree. I'm not an expert. I don't have any big credentials, but I've been through that road of burnout and checked out and not knowing where exactly my life was heading and how I can live. I was wondering how I can live a better life, and I I've learned a few things too, where now I have certain things figured out, not everything, because I think we're in a constant growth and we're never finished. But I'm looking to have, for those who are struggling, have presented them a different mindset. That it's not an end, and we can always grow and adapt, and we can always make a better life for ourselves.
We absolutely can. And it sure is helpful to have someone help see the blind spots. We all have them constantly. And like you said, I feel like the more I learn and I fill up this whole box full of knowledge, and then I'm at the top and I open the lid and there's a whole much bigger room ahead that I know nothing about. So it's a very fun adventure. Growth and learning is everything. And so you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone. You were terrified of public speaking. How did you change that?
And it goes back to mindset. It's, you know, before I discovered, my wife nudged me towards personal development and reading the book Mindset. I went and I joined Toastmasters, which is a club that helps you with your public speaking and getting over the anxiety. And this was 2013. I've stayed there for a month, did one speech. I thought I was going to pass out. It was so incredibly terrifying, and I told myself it's impossible. That's not me. Others can do it. I don't have the talent. I wasn't born. All of those limiting beliefs that a fixed mindset would tell me. And it was only in 2017-18 when I discovered the growth mindset that I went back, because I understood that as long as I put in the effort and as long as I keep improving and keep consistency, I can get better. And I can tell you that at times you don't know if it's true or not. And for me, before I joined Toastmasters and gotten over the fear of public speaking, I had to prove it otherwise, because I didn't know how. And I decided to run a marathon, which I've never done in my life. I told my wife when I met her, the running is not for me. I'm gonna pass out if I run more than 2 miles. And slowly applying the notion of a growth mindset, just every day a little bit more, one day at a time, just proving myself that I can do it. That gave me the confidence to walk into Toastmasters and be like, I'm ready to fail. I know I'm gonna be really bad at this for a long time, but I know I can improve as long as I am in this. And that's been a journey for the last 6 years.
That is so impressive. And thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. That's so let me make sure I understand this. You ran the marathon, and that's what gave you the courage to go back to Toastmasters?
Yes. Yeah. The marathon
Wow.
was something that, it was very tangible, because you have to train. So every week you do an extra mile. You go that literally and figuratively, you go the extra mile. And that was the proof that I didn't believe that I can run a marathon. It was just out of my it was a limiting belief. And the moment I realized and I pushed myself to run that marathon, I asked myself, well, if I can do this, what else can I do? And that's when the start of everything. It's just in my career, in my speaking, in every aspect of my life, things started progressing.
Oh my gosh, what a very cool story. And I know that my listeners are just eating this up. And when you need to go to the next level, if you can't do what you should do, do something. And your something happened to be a marathon, which is very tangible. I'm very impressed. Are you still running?
Yes, I'm doing one on in 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh, good for you. Good for you. So, what are some of the lessons that you've learned from becoming a marathon runner?
Well, first, I think it's very important to not be embarrassed for being bad, because a lot of times we stop before we even start because we're afraid to embarrass ourselves. Like it not necessarily for a marathon, but when you're talking about escalating in your career, or if you're looking to learn something new, a lot of people stop because they don't want to embarrass themselves that they don't know. But that's the price of entry. That's what we need to do to be able to learn and grow. And that was a big lesson that I learned in my speaking, as well as in marathon, because eventually, which is probably lesson number two, is you're going to fail. And depending on how you look at failure, it's gonna matter a lot, because we're so programmed that, oh, if you fail at something, you're a failure, but it's not the case. It's a great opportunity to learn. I can tell you, last week I was doing a speech in a contest, and I froze for 25 seconds. It was so embarrassing. I just lost my thought, and it was just blank. Nothing in my head was going on. And I looked back at the video, and it's very painful. It was a Toastmaster competition, but it really helps me review what I could have done better, and next time I will be so much more prepared. So that failure for me is just another data point that I need to ensure that my transitions are in my speaking are way more polished than I wanted them to be.
I am so glad. I want you to preach that. People are so afraid of failure, and they turn and they run and they stop and they don't push past it. However, every successful person I have ever interviewed has had failure on top of failure on top of failure. How do you said you can't allow yourself to get embarrassed by it. I understand that and I agree with that. How do I not get embarrassed by it? Give me some techniques.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I was highly embarrassed that particular day, and I felt quite bad about myself. But the reality is that most people don't care so much about others that they do about themselves. So they're gonna forget pretty fast that I was failing. It's only me that I'm gonna remember it. But there's also an interesting thing that happened during that failure. I had more people come up to me supporting and being encouraging about my failure than the times that I did do really good. And that was an excellent lesson, that failure it helps us it brings us together, and it's a good opportunity for us to be vulnerable, and then we can learn from it. But I think the lesson here is give yourself enough time to let that dust settle and just embrace that failure, but don't stay in it for too long. I've seen so many people that tried a few things a couple of times, and because they experienced the same type of failure, they decided that they're going to give up completely. But the reality is that when you're failing, yes, stay in it. It's painful, but then ask yourself, what did you learn? How can you do it better? That way, that's where the growth starts to happen. And if we're just staying there and being like, oh, I'm never going to do that again, I don't want to even think about it, you're not going to grow.
Absolutely. I heard a story, and I'm probably going to butcher it horribly. However, there was this young engineer, and he did something, and it cost his company over $1 million. And this was several years ago. And he went to his boss. He walked in with his letter of resignation, and he had his head down, and he put it on his desk. And his boss looked at it and tore it up. He said, "Are you kidding? I just spent $1 million on your education. No way are you going anywhere." And he turned out to be one of the best employees ever, because we do learn so much more from our failures than from our successes.
That's outstanding.
Okay.
Love that
It,
story.
It really is, and I'm sure that there was something wrong with it. However, if you Google it, it is a story that's out there. So this world, when you talked about how, as you wanted to grow, your sphere of influence, the people around you didn't like it, and Have you heard the story of how they catch crabs?
I Well, go ahead. I think I know something with if there are two in one, if it's just one in an aquarium, then it gets out. If there are two, they're pulling each other down.
Yeah, right. Like once the food is gone, the other crabs, one will try to leave, the other one will pull them down to literally break their limbs and keep them there. And humans do that as well. Humans will try to keep you there. Some of their intent is really positive. They love you and they're afraid that you're going to do some unknown scary thing. And some of their intent is just, I don't want you to leave me and you need to stay down here with me. How do you handle that with people that you really cannot eliminate from your life?
Yeah, and I have to preface that most of my surroundings, the people that I was surrounded with that didn't necessarily support me, it was just because they didn't understand. And they were very confused on how I can go on a path that wasn't the path that everybody was taking. So it was more of a misunderstanding of why am I doing the things that I'm doing. But for the ones who try to nudge me in a different direction, I try to limit the time that I stay with them. Like I'm there and I'm there with love and support, but when the discussions or the environment turns toxic, I just walk away. I walk in with love and I stay as long as there's love there, and then I just have to walk away. I I I know every time I've heard so many people ask, "Oh, how do I change that person? Because I'm changing, how do I change that person?" And we can't. And we can take the horse to the water, but if they don't want to drink, we have to just let them walk their own path. And that's kind of how I handled the people who don't understand where I'm going towards. Eventually, I think they're gonna have to accept me for how I'm living my life, and maybe inspire them as well.
There you go. You never give up on someone. You just limit your time with them. I think that's beautiful advice. Do you have any last words of wisdom for our folks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if anybody feels like they're at a loss, they don't know where exactly their life is going, they're stressed, overwhelmed, they feel like they don't belong, hang in there. Don't give up. I think there's always a different path. Sometimes we have to boil a little bit longer to really find our path, but there is a path. Just hang in there and just look for the right answers. And listening to a podcast like this is one of the avenues that you can get some new ideas that will open that door to new possibilities.
Thank you, Serban. I agree with you 100%. There are do you have any other podcasts or books that you recommend before I let you go? Of course, the Mindset book by Carol Dweck, that you have to pick that one. However, do you have any additionals?
Well, I'm an engineer, so I love a lot of studies and technicalities. There's a book by Sean Archer, The Happiness Advantage, that I just love. There's a lot of science-based proof there that having a positive mindset and focusing on the things that we can control and doing the things that we love to do is so much more beneficial for our lives. That's an instrumental book that I think I read 3 or 4 times at this point.
That is a great book recommendation. I was blessed enough to get to see him live at a Keller Williams family reunion once, and read the book several times too. So I am backing him up, ladies and gentlemen. Give yourself the gift of reading that book. It is life changing in the way you think and the way you see things. It has been an honor, Serban. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your time with our listeners.
Thank you very much for having me. It was an awesome discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you.